Thanks for clicking on the link. In this video, I'm going to give you a bit of a breakdown in terms of how we work with our clients here at Ripehouse Advisory. My name's Julian. I'm the head of strategy here at Ripehouse, and I've had the pleasure of working with hundreds of clients over the previous few years. And I want to walk you through in this video here exactly not only the strategies that our clients are working towards, but the actual process that we go through from not only picking the right location, but down to the right street and also the right property themselves as well. So stick around and you're going to really get some value from this video. So I guess firstly, and most importantly, it's understanding what our clients are working towards. So there is no such thing as one size fits all when it comes to property investing. Our clients are working towards a myriad of strategies. Some of them are looking to invest to just simply increase their wealth or set themselves up for a better retirement. Others are simply looking to grow their self-managed super fund. Some are looking to go down what's known as a debt reduction strategy, which essentially is looking to paying off their home loan in a much quicker time period where they may have the capacity to borrow for 1, 2, 3 properties. They hold on to those properties for a growth period, and growth periods can be anywhere from 3 to 7 years, then sell those properties off for profit and then use that to pay off their mortgages quicker. Or alternatively, we work with many investors across the country who potentially are priced out of their local market. So an example of that, they may be looking to live in Melbourne or Sydney and can't afford to buy locally or don't want to take on such a large mortgage. So instead, they want to make sure that they're working towards growing their wealth and they continue to what's known as rent vests, where they're renting where they're living, but ensuring they're investing across the country in more affordable locations. Now, to walk you through what type of assets we buy. So all we buy here at Ripehouse Advisory are established properties. They're only ever 3 or 4 bedroom family homes, homes that have been proven over decades and decades to be the strongest performing assets. They're always freestanding with no body corporates, and we simply never purchase apartments, units, or townhouses. And at no point through the process are we working with any builders or developers. It's simply that something we don't do. Now, to us here at Ripehouse, we have really broken down property investing into a science. We've had the privilege of working with over 1,000 clients over the years and assisting in over 2,000 properties purchased. And we have found one consistent thing is that when you put all of these ingredients together, where you're looking at things like employment, is that location having strong, diversified employment where we're not relying heavily on 1 or 2 industries? Are there new projects coming into those areas, which are increasing our lifestyle factors and drawing people into those locations, which in turn is increasing our population growth? But we're also keeping an eye on the new supply coming into an area, because if we have just as much supply as population growth, then supply is meeting demand. And when we put all of those items together, that is where opportunity is born. And we do this with our sophisticated data algorithm. So over the years, our algorithm has been in place since 2011, and we analyze over 15,300 suburbs each and every month. Now, we break that down and we monitor over 26 key data points. But understanding capital growth is a recipe, it's a dish. And each of those 26 data points is like an ingredient that goes into that dish. Not all of them are as important as one another, but it's understanding using that machine learning to break down and create what we call the R score. And the R score is a sophisticated ranking score measuring every single suburb across the country. Now, from a filtering process, I guess to walk you through what that looks like from a workflow perspective, at the moment, there's a bit over 15,300 suburbs. We then break that down to the top 10%. And the reason we do that, there is always a performance bell curve. Whether it's business, whether it's sport, whether it's property investing, you're always going to have a performance bell curve where in sport, your bottom performance are going to be your teams that are at the bottom of the ladder. Your top performers are going to be the ones that are sitting at the top. Now, for property, we obviously want to be at that top. Now, your bottom performing suburbs, they are typically going to be suburbs that are in areas that are in mining, tourism, agricultural hubs, and those areas may go through a massive slowdown or a complete closure, and they can lose a heap of their value overnight. Then you're going to get 60 to 80% of locations, which are just going to perform how the general economy is doing. Is it rising or falling interest rates? Is it war? Is it oil prices? Is it unemployment? Is it inflation? Those macro factors are going to control how 60 to 80% of property locations are going to perform. And then there's our top 10% of performers, which is ideally where we want to be. Now, whilst data is fantastic and it is a great leading indicator for us, it is not the sole indicator for us. This is where our team of experienced investors and experienced property advisors intervene. So 80% of our locations, which are first flagged from the data, are rejected. And the reason they are rejected is because good investing is about mitigating your risk exposure. So the key reasons and risk factors that remove 80% of those locations. So firstly, we don't buy in areas that are prone to cyclone, flood, and bushfire. And as you can imagine, here in Australia, there are plenty of locations which that applies to. Secondly, areas that have poor economic diversity. We like to see strong, diverse economies, which leads to investment grade areas. Areas that have too much new supply risk coming through, again, that extra supply can throttle our growth for years to come. And finally, though we're okay with large regional centers, tiny micro population towns, again, they are too susceptible to risk, population decline, lack of infrastructure spend, etc. So by the time that process is done, there's around 250 approved suburbs all across the country, but also at all different price points. So we buy properties from as low as $350,000 all the way into the millions of dollars, with the yields varying from 1% all the way up into the high fives. That is something that we work with our clients to make sure that we tailor fit that to their budget spend and also what's achievable in the market. Now from there, once those locations have refined, we look at every single opportunity that comes into the market. So on a weekly basis, depending on the season, there's anywhere between 4,000 to 6,000 properties that are sourced each and every week. That is where over 80% of our properties fail going through their very first layer of filtering. So the first reason is the properties are on too small of a land size. So we don't buy properties that are under 400 square meters. Those properties have been proven to underperform. We want to be buying properties that have high land to asset value ratio. Secondly, we don't buy properties that have been overcapitalized, where all the money is sitting in the house instead of the land component. Again, they may have been overspent on the build, the fit out, etc. And then thirdly, properties that aren't in the right demand configuration. We don't want to be buying a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom home where every single house on that block is a 4 and 2. Alternatively, if we're buying in older established areas, there might not be any 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom homes available in that location because all the homes there are 3 and 1. So we want to buy properties that are in demand, easy to rent and easy to sell. The next 2 checks is that we want to make sure that they're in the right street and they're also the actual right property as well. So the reason it's imperative that we buy in the right street, because the best street versus the worst street of the suburb can vary in price 20% plus or minus versus the suburb median. And that can be because of key reasons such as school zones, closer to good shopping centers, closer to public transport. It can also be because of natural disaster catchments. You can have one half of a suburb which is in a flood or a bushfire zone, and the other half isn't, and there can be huge difference in insurance premiums and ongoing costs. And then also you can have qualities of tenants that you attract. You might get certain pockets where there's higher crime rates. There could be more renters there. There could be more social or government housing. So it's really imperative we break down not only buying the right suburb, but also the right street. So I want to give you a demo here of a suburb down in Melbourne and breaking it down to certain locations. So if we look at the suburb here, and if we take a look at this top northeast quadrant at the top here, and we're looking at the moment at public housing. And if we look at the top here, we can see there's very little, only a handful of public housing homes in that corridor there. However, if we come down to the south and the center, we can see we automatically have some no-buy zones. We're seeing as high as 36% in some, got 35, and there's some double digits, and in and around there's some other areas of concern as well. And though we can't see it here in the slide, because technically this little odd shape here is actually the neighboring suburb, there are quite a bit of public housing adjacent to that pocket as well. So though this is not an automatic indicator of elimination, we want to make sure we then peel into the second layer. And the next thing we want to know is we want to know where are the owner occupiers are living. And the reason it's imperative we know where the owner occupiers are living, because owner occupiers have a large part to play in overall street appeal. Street appeal is the difference from someone getting out of their car at an open home, whether it's to rent or whether to buy the property, because your owner occupiers, they typically do three things over time. They renovate their home, they take care of their lawns and gardens, and they park in their driveways or garages. All those three things have significant impact in your overall street appeal. Now, if we break that down here and we look at those same quadrants again, we can see up here at the top, nearly 70 to 90% of this top pocket, which is quite high, but again, 70 to 90% of this pocket is owner occupied, so really strong. Down here in the bottom quadrant, we actually have more renters than we have homeowners. And the same thing is also happening in this little adjacent pocket, which is technically in the neighboring suburb, which basically means this whole bottom quadrant down here, they're either in the middle of or surrounded by not only a lot of public housing, but also a lot of renters, which in turn affects your desirability. And when your desirability is impacted, guess what? So is your sale of pricing as time goes on. So we can look here in terms of sold pricing. Up here at the top, we're in the high 800s into the $1 million territory. We come down the road just a minute or two drive away and we're in the 6s and 7s. And the same discrepancies also play out on the rental pricing, where we can be up here in the 6s up to as high as $700 per week, and here we're in the 4s and 5s mostly. So it's really imperative that we not only pick the right suburb, but we pick the right street. But then that also plays on to the next factor, which is making sure we're buying the right asset. We want to buy an asset that's easy to rent and easy to sell. We don't want to be picking a unicorn or an ugly duckling that's only appealing to certain buyers. So we have the most stringent due diligence checklist in the industry. The things we want to look for and the items on this checklist not only reduce our risk exposure, they have been backed by data to show they increase or decrease our days on market. And days on market is a leading indicator on how long your property takes to rent or sell. So the things that we look for, we want to look for a certain land square meterage as a bare minimum. We want a regular shaped block with no significant gradient or slope. We want our properties to be in rentable condition with no weird floor plans, swimming pools, and there must be a place to park your car. Then we want to make sure that we're not backing onto any major highways or train lines. There's no busy or 4-lane roads out the front. This is very unappealing to people with family or animals. One-way streets, bus stops, roundabouts, T-intersections. And though it's great being close to schools, it's not so great being directly opposite the entrance. Then the other items we want to look out for is we want to avoid things like high-tension power lines or really large-scale mobile phone towers, areas that have a lot of new subdivisions or land supply coming through. If you think about premium locations of where you may live or thinking of living, they don't have all these units and townhouses and subdividable land right next door. They're standalone property. So we want to make sure that we control the supply. We don't want to be next door to childcare centers, too close to abattoirs or tips, cemeteries, commercial properties, or busy walkways. Then on the public housing level, in certain states, we can actually individually highlight where the public housing homes are. We may be buying in a pocket where there's 400 homes, only 3 of them are public housing. But if they happen to be our left neighbor, our right neighbor, and the person across the street, our desirability in that pocket is not ideal. Then we check for flood zones, bushfire zones, problematic easements, and anything area specific. So an example here, in areas like Ipswich or Newcastle, which were old mining facilities and they may have mining overlays. So we really want to drill down and make sure we're buying an asset that passes all of our stringent due diligence checklists. Once that's complete, we're normally left somewhere between 80 to 100 properties per week, which from there, before we pass them down to our clients to consider, this is when we contract in licensed valuers to essentially check if the pricing of that property is going to stack up to our return on investment numbers. Now, unfortunately, as you could probably imagine, around 30% or more of properties in the market are just priced at a point where it's hard for us to achieve those numbers. So we have to pass them on and leave them behind and hope that they come back with some pricing adjustments. But that ends up leaving us between 50 to 60 properties per week to pass on to our clients to consider and match up with their personal preferences and goals. From there, they still need to go through some hoops. They still need to go through pricing negotiations, finance checks, building and pest inspections, and most importantly, you as a client need to be interested in that opportunity. It normally means it leads to us putting forward 20 to 25 offers per week, in which we're successful in purchasing somewhere between 7 to 10 opportunities each and every week, which might sound like a lot, but on a national level, it's about 1 in every 5 to 600 properties we look at in just over 1.5% of suburbs. It's a really, really refined process that we go through. Now, it's by following this scientific-based approach, which is what has led us to outperform the market considerably since helping our clients purchase properties. And the main reason for this is our algorithm and our philosophy on property investing is really geared towards the first 5 years of that property's life cycle being the most aggressive in the performance window. Because if you were to buy a property and it doesn't do anything for the first 5 years, it has great fundamentals, but essentially it puts your life on pause for that 5 years. Whereas if you buy a property and you do see accelerated growth in that first 5 years, it gives you options. You could use that growth to either leverage the equity and purchase another property and build a portfolio, or you could sell those properties off for profit and use it to buy your first home, pay off debt, whatever it may be. That's up to you and your personal circumstances, but we want to make sure we get our clients into the strongest position to create our options. Now, it's by following this methodology that's allowed us to achieve great success for our clients. Clients like one of our clients here, Jack. So Jack and his family came to us a few years ago and purchased 2 and recently their 3rd investment property through us. Now, in that period of time, they saw fantastic growth, parts that allowed them essentially to sell off their homes and then start traveling all across the country, living a lifestyle that they've dreamed of working towards. Or clients like Parvez. Parvez came to us. He had an investment property in Sydney that was really not performing, but was also hindering his cash flow. He then ended up selling his property and coming back to us and purchasing 6 affordable properties that not only greatly increased his cash flow, going from $800 or $900 a week in today's market up to closer to $3,500 per week, but it also seen him make over $1 million of growth in just over a year. And these aren't just outliers of performance. There's numerous clients achieving this time and time and time again. Now, someone would like to know, I guess, what do we charge for our fee and how do we make our money? So just for full disclosure, we do not make any money throughout the entire process other than what our clients pay us in our fees. And we offer 2 payment structures for our clients. So we either offer an upfront payment option, which is $15,000 plus GST, or alternatively, we have a staggered payment option, which is 3 equal installments of $7,000 plus GST, totaling to $21,000 plus GST. Now, there are no ongoing subscription costs that we charge. We don't charge any commission fees. We simply have a per purchase fee. Now, the only fees we do not cover are your standard purchasing costs, being stamp duty, building and pests, and conveyancing. However, we make sure you're supported all the way from your property search to settlement, and then post your purchase, we're continuing to give you reviews of your property every 9 to 12 months. As well as that, we also hold a mastermind class every 3 weeks to let you know what's happening in the market and keep you updated in terms of research and other things happening in the property and space. So I hope you found this video successful. And if you have, make sure you click and fill your details in below, and we look forward to getting you on a call with myself or one of the team to discuss your property investing goals further.